Story Corner, presented by Jennifer. Essix, Fall of the Four, Part 1. Soaring through the clear blue sky, Essix used the air currents to her advantage. The wind slid across her great feathers as she banked through an updraft to gain altitude in search of a stronger tailwind. Ahead, a forest spread out before her, a sea of green textures. Behind her raged the fiercest battle ever to stain the fields of Erdas. The corpses of men and animals were piling up. Before the day was through, the tally would reach into the hundreds of thousands. In her mind, Essix could still see the bodies torn apart by tooth and claw, pierced by shaft and blade. She, Briggan, Uzara, and Jhi were all needed at the battlefront. Led by the Green Cloaks, the four embattled nations of Erdas had united in a desperate offense against the conquerors. If the gamble worked, the Devourer would fall, along with Kovo and Garathon. If not, the ever-growing army of conquerors would sweep across the continent of Erdas, bringing an entire world under one domineering rule. The three earthbound great beasts needed more time to reach the meeting place. So, after they departed, Essix had lingered as long as she could, tearing into the conquerors with her talons and helping the Green Cloak armies adjust to the enemy commanders repositioning their forces. The warriors who had followed her to Sterile, man and beast, needed her there for courage, for guidance, for protection. The Green Cloaks would never muster the support necessary to mount this attack without her, Briggan, Uzara, and Jhi. Now, in their hour of greatest need, she was leaving these armies behind. The Green Cloak generals understood the reasons, and had communicated to their soldiers their patron beasts were not abandoning them. Still, Essix had sensed the despair that fell over the Green Cloaks as the great beasts withdrew from the battlefield. Essix had almost stayed. The others could make her arguments on her behalf. She had no love for gatherings. But the appeal would not carry the same weight as they would coming from her. Like it or not, Essix knew how to read her fellow guardians better than anyone, and that could only provide a meaningful advantage when persuasion was required. In this dire hour, Talon had finally summoned a grand council. If all the great beasts would stand together against the madness of Kovo and Garathon, the outcome of the battle would be much more certain. This meeting was too vital to miss. Below her, in the distance, the clearing came into view. Much of Sterile was desolate waste or jagged red mountains. Only Talon could have created such an idyllic forest on so harsh a continent in such a brief time. Stately trees surrounded a flat meadow where tall grass rippled in the breeze. A shallow stream meandered across the clearing, its bed a treasure trove of polished pebbles. A few bulky boulders added character. The other beasts were there, all except Kovo and Garethon, who had predictably shunned the proceedings, and Mullup, who would participate from afar. The octopus preferred not to travel, which freed the others to gather in non-coastal locations. Trimming her wings, Essix plunged towards the meadow. The exhilarating speed focused her thoughts. Until now, as a whole, the great beasts had chosen neutrality in the worldwide war. They had not met in a grand council since the early days, when Kovo and Garethon appeared less directly involved, and the Devourer was just beginning to reveal his unquenching lust for world domination. This would be the last chance to gain meaningful assistance against the conquerors. It would be no small task to steer this headstrong group towards war. Essix alighted on a fallen log an instant before the sun reached its zenith, the appointed starting time. Her claws gripped the decaying wood much as a lesser falcon would clinch to a branch. "Cutting it close, are we not?" Caribou remarked, stretching his golden form and extending his claws. As a physical specimen, none of the great beasts could quite match the lion. If he were not so arrogant and disinterested, he might have been their leader. None could rival him in battle, but he seldom roused himself to action, content instead to pursue a life of a lordly leisure. Why hunt when he could feast on the spoils of the lionesses? Why fight when intimidation sufficed? "I did not want to leave the battle," Essix said. "The free nations are hard-pressed. The fate of Erdas may very well be determined before the sun sets." "Does this mean we will be hurried?" said the enormous Danish, who looked more like a wrinkly gray hill than an elephant. "I did not cross the deep to dash through a hasty conversation." "The day you dash is the day I fly," laughed Suka. Sitting casually, huge paws in her lap, the polar bear looked to be in a playful mood. When she wasn't, all of Erdas needed to be where. Essix resisted a laugh. Briggan, Ruthless, and Uzara showed less restraint. Draped in silks, shaded by an embroidered canopy, the elephant looked like the exact opposite of haste. "I can further than anyone," Suka continued, "but a quick council suits me just fine." "Fool's muck," Danish said, in a voice like the first tremors of an earthquake. "A grand council is no minor occasion. A certain dignity must be maintained." A movement off to one side caught Essix's eye. She swerved to see a kangaroo had wandered into the clearing. All the great beasts turned to regard the accidental visitor. The unfortunate kangaroo watched with paralyzed anxiety from the edge of the meadow. The poor creature knew it had made a fatal mistake. Essix could sense its heart rate accelerating. The relative size of the kangaroo emphasized the enormity of the great beasts. Though fully grown and not a small specimen, the kangaroo would barely serve as a morsel for Carbo. Only an excellent jump would allow it to brush against Talon's belly. Next to the colossal bulk of Danish, the marsupial seemed no bigger than a chipmunk. Talon raised his head, the tips of his magnificent antlers overtopping even Danish. "Let us begin," the elk announced. The great beast lost interest in the kangaroo and came to attention. A hush fell on all of nature. Even the nearby brook seemed to run quieter. Essix looked up at their leader, trying not to succumb to a sense of awe. Of all the great beasts, Talon was the hardest to read. "Not all have come," Rumpus complained. "This is the appointed time and place," Talon stated. "All were invited. Mullup declined to attend in person. Kovu and Garethon gave no reply. From the corner of her eye, Exis saw the kangaroo scamper away, taking advantage of the small mercy. Hopefully the animal would learn greater care from the experience. "They're busy taking over the world," Brannigan growled. "The battle is raging. Why are we here trading words while the fate of Erdas teeters?" "The great beasts have never battled one another," Rx said firmly. The massive curls of his horns shone in the brilliant in the sunlight. "Let the humans settle their own disputes." Briggan began to pace. "Thanks to the bile, this is not merely a human matter. The conquerors have stolen animals from each of our spheres and brought them into bondage. Kovu and Garethon openly aid the enemy in his bid for universal conquest. This war involves all life on Erdas." Exis felt sorry for the wolf. Nearly the size of Caribou and close to his equal in combat, Briggan was a fighter, not a talker. He wanted nothing more than to rejoin the fray with his wolf pack. The tension was evident in his voice, his movements, his posture. "Have we anything new to discuss?" Howell asked. The eagle spoke in clear tones that commanded respect. Only Talon had a more regal aspect. "When we last met, the Devourer was marshalling his forces with the backing of Kovu and Garethon. The bile was spreading. As a group, we elected to wait and see if humanity could quell the threat. Much has occurred since then," Lisa said, her voice quiet but intense. She held very still, but it was the stillness of a bowstring about to be released. The stillness of a predator before the pounce. "Many of our talismans were stolen. The Evertree was damaged. The spiritual link between man and beast has been put at risk. New bonds are forming, but they are twisted and painful. Young humans and the animals they bond with are becoming sick and deranged. Sometimes they die outright." "You want to blame Kovu and Garethon for the damage to the Evertree?" Howard asked. "Where's your proof? Such speculation is irresponsible. It sounds to me like the actions of conspiring men. How might men have gained access to your talismans?" "Perhaps because, against our counsel, the four of you have strayed too close to the humans." "Too much familiarity with humans can be perilous," Seeker warned. "We keep our distance for good reason." "We are not the only ones who have lost our talismans," Briggan reminded the group. "Where's yours, Hawaii?" The eagle spread his colossal wings in anger, and it was as if the sun had been swallowed by a storm cloud. The council fell into shadows and silence, until Harrowell regained his composure, tucking his wings back into place. "As could be predicted," the eagle replied, "once you awaken the desire for our talismans, the insatiable humans only crave more. Mine was stolen while I slept, taken from my very eyrie. They are sly, these humans, that much is certain." "Let the humans fight humans," Rufus said gruffly. The boar looked disgruntled. Exis had seldom seen him cheerful. "This war involves more than human fighting humans," Jin said in velvety tones. "Kovu and Garethon openly back the Devourer." "The outcome will be determined today," Briggan said. "If the Greencloaks fall, the Devourer will take over the world. It is already too late to test our full strength against theirs. We mustered our best troops and bypassed the majority of the Conqueror's armies to bring the fight to their homelands. The gambit is all or nothing." "Why not wait and see if the assault works?" Danish asked. "Because without our help, the Greencloaks will fall," Briggan snarled. "And without their help, we can't stop the Devourer." "Nonsense," Erix protested. "If we decide to eliminate them, the 13 of us could wipe out the ape, the serpent, and their human pet at our leisure." "You do not appreciate their numbers," Jin said calmly. "Their armies are fanatically devoted. Thanks to the vial, every human soldier has a spirit animal bound to comply with any order. We are indeed powerful, but as a whole their might is greater. Envision a vast army of ants bringing down an ox. This would be our fate. If we act now, we can end this threat," Exis said. We never have we'll never have to test whether we can defeat the Devourer on our own. And yet I remain unmoved, Carvo said flatly. The same four who urged for war in the last meeting are repeating themselves. Your involvement in human affairs have led to a devastating battle that you will probably lose. Now you want us to rescue you. You wish for your folly to overrule our prudence. The council was quiet for this. Essix brought her sharp eyes to meet Carvo's own. And despite his callous words, the lion was the first to drop his gaze. Something else was at work here behind his protests, though she couldn't make out what. One great beast should not attack another, Dinesh declared. Such fighting is unthinkable. It has no precedent. Muscles bunching and tail swaying, Uzara responded in a poisonous tone. You want to discuss breaking precedents? Great beasts have never let humans decorate them with silks, nor have they helped design shrines to themselves. Dinesh, I am more interested in the opinion of great beasts who can find their own food. Rumpus exploded into laughter. Dinesh raised his trunk in indignity. I did not traverse the deep to listen to. You were shipped and dragged here by humans like a cargo. Is a spat. You'd have handlers waving palm fronts at you right now if they weren't forbidden from grand councils. Dinesh strained to his full height, long ivory tusks protruding like massive spears. The day dimmed. His voice thundered. Insolence! Defamation! Take that back this instant, or I will waddle out from under your canopy into the sunlight. Uza finished. Tossing his huge head, Dinesh heaved his canopy to the ground. He trumpeted and the meadow quaked. Essix felt her feathers vibrating. If you were worth the trouble, I'd trample you flat as a carpet. Would that not be one great beast opposing another? Uza replied smugly. Rumpus laughed gutsily. Got you there, he exclaimed. Few things amused the boar as much as arguments. Dinesh sulkily plopped down on the grass. A disagreement is not war. Our views may differ. At times we get irritated and make idle threats, but we have never let our arguments escalate into violence. Essix appreciated the point Uza had made, but disagreed with the delivery. Dinesh was no closer to siding with them. If anything, the elephant was now further alienated. None of the great beasts lacked pride. Angering the others would not produce the desired results. The thought of great beasts fighting each other is abhorred, Essix said. We may not always agree, but we have always shared a mutual respect. Some more than others, Dinesh scolded, his wounded eyes on Urza. We attend the great council out of the same respect, Essix continued. We crossed great distances to confer together, but two of our numbers lacked the decency to attend today, though they were much closer to the meeting place than most of you. I miss Kovu, Suka said. He told the best jokes. Their absence is hardly a reason for war, Carvo muttered. We established that this is the first time great beasts have opposed one another in battle, Essix said. She looked slowly around the circle, meeting the gaze of each of her fellows in turn. But great beasts have also never caused such harm in the world. Our calling has ever been to protect and preserve Erdas, to seek balance, to limit tragedy, not to plunge the world into chaos. When have any of you stripped animals of their free will? When have you supported a tyrannical conqueror? Have you ever shamelessly ignored the warnings of Talon and the other members of the council? Kovu and Garathon have committed evils that are unthinkable to the rest of us. They remain unrepented. Perhaps we must resort to the unthinkable means to stop them. Her eyes last fell on Arx the ram, who stomped his hoof. All great beasts are free to act as we deem necessary. He said, none of us is the lone guardian of Erdas. Not even Talon. We each share a portion of that responsibility, and we each have our own methods and priorities. We counsel one another when necessary, but we do not compel. Kovu and Garethon have made no move against any of us. Not directly, Jhin said, but they have created war in our domains, and they have used the bile to force animals into our care into servitude. We have all caused conflict of one kind or another, Suka said. Let the humans fight it out. This war could be just what we need. There are too many humans. They multiply on every continent in every climate. They're drastically changing the balance. Their herds must be reduced. They take up too much space and consume too many resources. Humans are fast becoming the greatest plague Erdas has ever faced. Thanks to this war, humans are falling in greater numbers than we have ever seen. Perhaps we should celebrate. Humans are not our enemies, Tellum said, his voice effortlessly carrying more authority than any of the others could muster at their best. They are fellow tenants of this world. Nature is full of hard realities, predator and prey, seasons of want and seasons of plenty. Humans have the right to survive and prosper as best they can. They have the same claim to Erdas as all creatures. Humans claim too much, Rufus grumbled. It will get worse. Our world is changing too quickly, Suka said. There are many parts of Erdas I no longer recognize. Beloved wilds where bears once roamed that are no longer open to us. Humans are the agents behind it. Perhaps Kovu recognizes the need to curb them. Different species rise and fall, Jhin said, her voice a soothing balm. Exis realized that if anyone could reach Suka through the walls of her quips and anxiety, it would be Jhin. The great panda was tranquility itself. Some become dominant, others go extinct. Humans could threaten the natural balance. They could also help preserve it. Although humans have the greatest capacity for evil, of all species, they also present the most potential for good. They are more adept at putting the resources of Erdas to inventive use. Their integrity may cause problems, but it can also be a source of hope. Humankind will not overthrow the balance, Briggan said stoutly, not while we stand watch. But must we fight their battles for them? Caravel asked. I'm with Suka. The more dead humans, the better. Humans aren't all bad, Danish protested. Suka chuckled. Not when they worship you. Danish bristled. They don't worship me. Suka laughed harder. What about the temples and the rituals and the feasts in your honor? Don't worry, Dinesh. I love that you domesticated them. I have sought ways to work with humans rather than against them, Dinesh explained. My methods have yielded some favorable results. Perhaps I have overplayed the role of enlightened mentor. I'll consider scaling it back. Humans, Rufus grunted. Who can trust them? I have found that certain humans can be wonderful, Caravel said slyly. They're an acquired taste.